Hey everybody, Sean here for Poker VIP, back with part 4 of this 500 Zoom video series. I think in the last video review I kind of ended it prematurely saying the action was kind of dead, but I had spoken too soon because immediately after we kind of got into some interesting spots. So let's just go ahead and roll that tape. Pretty bad hand on table 3, but closing the action semi-connected, I think we have an okay spot to defend. Table 2, very standard defend as well. So flop trips, and I'm going to go ahead and lead out. This is a board that 4 ways very often going to be checked around. Flat with our pretty nice hand on table 1. Get check 2. And I think this is a spot I would normally just check back, try and turn some equity. That's why I don't mind taking a bet here and then continuing to bet on the turn if we pick up some equity. But that's a turn that gives us some equity, and certainly going to bet now if we get check 2, which we do. We're going to have, so I think in part 3 I had mentioned the part about delay c-betting and delay betting in general, and not worrying all the time about, you're having your range looking super capped and thinking you're going to get counter-exploited because of that. We're certainly going to have plenty of King X in our check-back range here on table 1 that we should now be betting for protection on the turn, where we didn't want to maybe build up a pot in position with just a ace-king, for example. So I think this is the perfect spot to go ahead and bet. Table 3, really bad turn card for us, especially when we get called by 2 players. Ace doesn't change a whole lot, although I guess Real Crap Dad, which amazing name, might have some aces he decides to peel us with on the flop. But there's just so many flushes in both their ranges that we'd be turning this hand into a bluff, and I guess there's some merit to doing so on this board. I think it would look a whole lot more credible if you bet the turn and river. The problem is both players very often are going to have the nut flush and kind of discount you having ace-4. As well as, I guess, sometimes Real Crap Dad will peel his kings on the flop, especially if they has some kind of diamonds to go with it, like king-king, 10-8 with 10 high diamonds, for example. So we go ahead and get out of the way. Just flat with the suited aces in the small blind. Small pot. I'm hoping for the big blind here, who's kind of short, to squeeze, and then we can rejam over the top. That doesn't happen, but we flop a wheel, and we'll start off by check calling a half-pot bet. Table 2, we have a limped pot, 3-way. I go ahead and bet with top 2, which is still top 2 on the turn. And on the turn, I think going for a check raise is going to be better. Like, he doesn't have 6-4 because even if he's flatting the flop, he should really be raising the turn with a hand that's now very, very vulnerable. So he doesn't have that, and I think he's just very heavily weighted to. He shouldn't really have any like ace for trips kind of stuff that we're missing value from. And so I think his range is predominantly draw heavy. And, on that board, when we have 4-6, it's an incredibly terrible run out for us, right? So we're going to be checking our combos of 4-6, and I think to kind of keep people honest and balanced and not get exploited pretty badly in a spot like that, we need to be checking some of our boats. And so I think this is a good spot to do that with. Unfortunately, he has Jack High clubs, which we may or may not have gotten value from. I think maybe betting. Well, I would say if we theoretically, like if the river was the 5 of diamonds, I think it's probably a better spot to just go ahead and bet, or better spot to check rather. But yeah, I think it's okay of a spot to go for a check raise. Table 2, we 3-bet with King High Rundown. C-bet very small on a very dry flop. And now turn top 2, which has brought a whole lot of draws. But we hold the Jack of Clubs, and we have a 9 for the gut shot. That said, I still want to bet pretty big. Get called. Now we have a 60% river shove if we choose to do so. And I don't know that we should. So he sometimes has, well, he doesn't have King Queen, or better, because he's shoving the turn. Sometimes he has things like, he certainly has a lot of all 5x given our small flop bet. And if he has a 5x with the turn draws, or if he has something like 5, 4, 6, he's probably calling, well, not always calling, but sometimes calling when he has like 5, 4, 6 with spades or something similar. But more often than not, he just has like a weak king. And I mean, I haven't played much with this player, but if we have a read that he's gonna be calling bets on the river here with ace king, then we should shove, obviously. But I think we end up value cutting ourselves more often than not when we get called in a spot like that. Table 3, we call, looks like a min raise from the button. Flop goes check check. We turn an open ender, decided to check. I think here on the river, we, even though we don't really rep much of anything, should go ahead and bet. Given that on the turn, he should be betting all his hands that have, top pairish type of hands for protection, given how dynamic the turn card was for that board. Here's the aces, get called by the player in middle position. Next up. And so yeah, just to kind of finish off the ace-7 hand there on the right, really bad board for the aces, especially versus the middle position caller. So definitely a spot to be checking. So yeah, the ace-7, I think it's probably better to be betting the club river rather than a diamond river. So like I had said, the 5 of diamonds would be a better card to check. I think I kind of screwed up my words earlier, but yeah, just to clarify, I think like a 5 of diamonds river is a better spot to check than this ace of clubs, because he's going to have more flushes on the club river rather than the diamond. But I still think it's a decent spot to be checking. We check again with our aces on table 3 on the turn, and now on the river we hold the ace of hearts, but decided to just go ahead and check and try and win it as showdown, which will happen a decent bit of the time. I mean, we do credibly rep flushes. Maybe not the... Yeah, we'll have some flushes that are betting in that spot on the river that check the flop and turn. But I think holding a king, especially like to block some 2 pairs that are kind of especially likely from a potential middle position flatting range, we should win a decent amount of showdown there, that we don't need to worry too much about bluffing with that particular hand. Raising kings and seeing a flop 4-way on table 2 with top 2 on 3-4-6 rainbow. We get check raised on that board, and it just doesn't look all that credible. I think everybody just limped into the pot. Or no. So it looks like we called. Sorry. Did not remember the action correctly. So under the gun opens, we flat after middle position also flats. So let's get back to where we were. So, I mean, he is a little loose, and he will have more 5-7 combos as a result of that, but it's also just way less likely for him to have something like that on a board like this. And yeah, I think we can play turns okay, given that we're in position as well. So go ahead and call. Fortunate turn for us. We're still quite deep, so I want to bet in order to bet a size so that we can shove on the river. And I think that bet size accomplishes that. We 3-bet the jacks and 6s in the cutoff. Flop the effective nuts. Again, not too worried about 4-7 in a middle position opening range. And going to go ahead and c-bet. Looks like I'm debating whether to bet small or kind of a 2/3-ish size. Just take that one down. Table 2, we go ahead and open on the button, which is fine. And flop an okay flush draw. Nothing that great. I think I'd prefer to see a check back here, given our backdoor straight draws as well, which we've now turned. And get led into. It's not a. Yeah, I think folding isn't really an option. Raising is an option. We will have some queen-queen, I guess. They'll have some stuff that, maybe an ace-high or something like that. That will certainly make fold. And it looks like that's what I'm deciding to go for. Making it pretty big, trying to rep queen-queen, which I would certainly size that way as well. Looks like on table 1 I defended and decided to lead this board, which I think is fine. Yeah, I don't expect overpairs to fold for 1. We don't have any 10s or jacks, so he is probably continuing when he has some sort of straight draw, or better. So yeah, I think given our side cards there with the queen-queen, it's an okay spot to lead. Though certainly not standard. I guess standard would be to either check call or check raise. Table 3, we defend with the jacks. Flop is checked around, and I'm betting the turn here for value. I expect a lot of aces up or better to be calling at this point, and I think we can go for 2 streets with this hand as well. But we get no streets. Sometimes that's how it goes. Go ahead and flat on the button with a 9-high rundown. Table 1, we turn top pair, but no real reason to bet. Don't need any protection, and yeah, this hand's just going to be better as a bluff catcher. And gets checked down, and we win a showdown. So, perfectly fine. Table 2, start off with a check. I don't hate a lead in that spot with the top pair and some backdoor straight draws. But yeah, I mean, check calling is certainly the normal play. I think, given that we check call the flop, this card is obviously very good for our range. We've got way more 5-6s than he does, along with ace-5, and let's go ahead and bet and take that one down. Obviously, I'm not only bluffing in that spot. You should be betting when you do turn 5-6, because you should try and get some value in a spot where pre-flop razor and c-betting, that kind of board, is very unlikely to continue betting the turn. Like, even if he has aces with spades, with nut flush draw blocking ace-5 combos, still very likely to check back, because he doesn't want to get blown off his equity, potentially. So, I think you want to be leading there a lot with your straight combos. And you can mix in some bluff, semi-bluff type stuff like we did right there. We open queens and nines and call a 3-bet from the small blind. Not a good board. We're just going to go ahead and fold our hand. We flat from the small blind on table 1, which I think is fine. I think 3-betting is, don't really like it. Obviously, if we just have single suited, I would like it. And it looks like, yeah, so go for check raise here. This is obviously a little exploitable, or exploitative, or both. So we block top 2. I think this player is going to be c-betting very often in this kind of spot. And we also have a lot of ace-king in our range, I guess. So it's not, terribly out of line or anything. So he calls us on... He calls the flop check raise. I think now we should just give up. I think he's flatting most of his continuing range on this kind of board, like including his kings and aces. So, along with his flush draws when he has, jack, queen of clubs. So, but I think he's just going to have, we're going to run into the nuts a little too often, maybe. Although I haven't done the math. Maybe this is one worth breaking down in Poker Juice or something like that. Club River, obviously a terrible card to bluff on. And we're just going to check fold. Table 3, looks like I open and then bet the flop. Now we call and bet the flop. Small blind flats. And I think here we have a spot to continue betting. Again, small blind shouldn't have that many 6x combos. We discount some 6-8s. And we don't really discount any wraps. So I think we want to bet for protection still there on the turn. On the river, we're probably getting some value from queens when we bet small, but obviously cutting. I mean, sometimes he does have aces as well. So I think this is actually pretty thin. Like he's just folding all if we assume he's calling with aces and shoving a 6 and calling with all his queens, it's probably pretty break even. He's going to have a lot more queen-queen than anything else, if that's the range we assign him. But I think his range is mostly consisting of the wraps or combo draws, and then aces and a 6. And against that, there's not really any value. So I think it's probably a little too thin, that bet, given the range that I think we can we've correctly assigned him there. Table 1. So we defend, and it's 4-way flop, and we flop top pair with a gut shot and a little bit of backdoor action. Three-handed, and I think, like, obviously we're happy to get it in against the short stack who leads for pot. Wouldn't be so thrilled about getting it in against the pre-flop raiser there, but I think we have enough here to make him fold some better hands with a raise, and when we are getting it in, we're not in terrible shape. As you can see here, we're doing pretty alright. So yeah, I like that raise, given the stack size of the player who's leading and the fold equity we are going to have on a board like that. Combined with the fact that we're almost never crushed by the pre-flop raiser. You know, and I think with his actual hand, he has a very tough decision with bottom 2 there, facing my raise. Like, I personally would fold in that spot. I think it's, yeah, like he's kind of in the best. Yeah, this is the best case scenario for him, obviously. And obviously he's doing very well against our 2 hands. He's got 50% almost, 3-way. But a lot of the times he's going to be drawing like almost dead when I have queen 5 or queen 7. And even when I have something like 6, 7, 8, 9, I'm a favorite. So, oops. Little playlist going on there. So we 3-bet the 10 high rundown against a short stack, which against the short stack probably not the best idea. And then got it in with after c-betting the flop with a whole bunch of backdoors with a very good price. Here 8 high rundown against a guy with 12 bigs, just gonna fold. We flat the double suited queens and 5s versus an under the gun range, which I think is fine. Against some under the gun ranges, this is worth 3-betting for people who are opening too loose, but otherwise, it's obviously not terrible to get 4-bet. It's not good, obviously, either, but you can profitably call the 4-bet. But I think against tight under the gun ranges, you're going to get 4-bet a little too often. When you decide to 3-bet a hand like this, and just makes for a better flatting hand against an under the gun range. So that's what we did, and fold that flop. We flat with the decent kings and pretty bad board. I think we just need to let this one go. So here, got exactly what happened on the replayed hand. Looks like I wasn't clever enough to just hit the replay button, but I think flop went check, and then I bet the turn. I think the turn don't really need to bet with the straight draw, with the pair of 10s for showdown value. And then I think if we do bet the turn, we should bluff on the river when we brick. So I'm not too thrilled with the way that one played out. Here, table 1, open and c-bet. we turn trips and decided to check this one back for a little bit of strength in my turn checking range. Yeah, I mean, we don't need any protection, really. Like, I mean, I guess this particular river card is the only thing we'd need to protect against, would be that inside 7-8-9 draw. But again, like, we hold some hearts, and like, if I didn't hold hearts, this is a definite bet for value and protection on the turn. But again, like, you want to consider your side cards, and this bet might be a little too big there on the river. But think we should be going for some value there. Table 3 looks like it's been checked down to the river where we make kind of crappy 2-pair, but it should be good, but not really getting any value from betting, so I think we'll just go ahead and check and probably win. Table 1, open on the button, check back the flop, and now pot the turn. I like this. Like, if I am going to bet, I think it should be pot or very near pot, given the board and given, like, if I do have King Jack or Jack 8, King 5, I guess, that I could check back on the flop. I'll be betting quite big with that. We river the straight, and again, go and bet pot. When it's a decent sized pot. And so he certainly has a check calling hand on the turn. I wouldn't, yeah, I mean, if he, I think he should bet the turn sometimes too. With this hand, like, it's good, but it probably wants some protection, though check calling is fine. On the river, I think he has a tough decision. But, yeah, I don't mind his call. Given, like, I'm going to have a whole lot of 9-10, Queen-10 ace, things like that. And especially when I polarize my size and go for full pot, I'm not really doing that with King-Jack anymore. Maybe Jacks and then the straights, something like that. So, yeah, I don't mind his call. I think it's good. Borderline good. Very good. Somewhere in that range. Looks like, I'm not sure what happened on table 2 there, but we end up folding the turn even though we pick up the nut flush draw. There's some action going on a couple of these spots, so let's rewind this back. So, looks like we defend, maybe it was min raise, I guess? Yeah, looks like it was a min raise from under the gun, and call with some backdoors. Table 1 with middle pair, gut shot, and a straight draw. Very standard check call there on the flop. Turn card on table 1 isn't great for us to lead on, I don't think. There's just a lot he's going to continue with on that kind of card. And so we end up folding on table 2 with, even though we pick up the nut flush draw, I think he bets, he's only betting 2/3, but being out of position in this hand really, really stinks. When we turn the nuts, like, there's no card on the river that helps us except the spade, and we're never getting value when a spade hits, or like barely ever. Sometimes if he happens to have the second nuts, he'll call our river bet, but he's probably never going to bluff a spade. And, you know, when he does have a straight or a set or whatever he's got, he's just going to lose at showdown. So we don't really get to maximize the value of our hand there because we're out of position. And so I think the fold there is tight, but good in that spot. Turn checks back on table 1, and we fold to the big river bet. I think it was a big bet. Yeah, it was a pot-sized bet here with, you know, the nut low flush. And even though he's on the button, going to have more bluffs than usual in that spot, I decided to just fold our hand. Open some hands on the tables on the top. We get min 3-bet on the button. I'm not really sure what to make of that, but we have certainly aces that are more than good enough to be 4-betting, given the stack sizes. Obviously, if you're like 60 big blinds deep, you're 4-betting all your aces, but when you're 150 deep, you're not 4-betting all of them out of position. So here, 6, 7, 10 flop, holding 2 9s. We're going to be bluff catching in this spot. So it's a spot and a board that I think you want to check most of your range, including when you have sets. And I mean, the few times you do have sets or straight. So he bets under a third pot, just right around a third pot. Very simple, clear-cut call here. Turn is not a very good one for us. King of diamonds. If we face a bet here, though, we might have to just, I mean, 2 stack to pot ratio. I don't know, it'd be tough. It'd be a close call if we face a sizable bet there. Probably call and then decide on some rivers. Checks back the turn, and now the river brings a flush. So we check. I mean, obviously hoping he just checks it and we're good. But we face a sizable bet, kind of average sizing, I guess. Table 1, we just c-bet 10-3-3 and take that one down. So I think here, if we, it's a pretty tough spot, I think, with this hand. So he's obviously very polar in this spot. Like he's betting all his sets, he's betting all his 2 pairs or better on the turn. And so on the river, he's got flushes or doo-doo baby. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense for him to kind of stab the flop with whatever and pick up some equity on the turn. Think it's a good card for me to check shove on, which it is. I mean, compared to the rest of the deck, it's, you know, an above average turn card for me. So it would make some sense for him to want to check back in that spot to get to realize his equity on the river and not get check shoved and blown off that equity. And I think with the stuff that he's just firing on the flop to, you know, just to bluff, he's very often going to follow up on the turn with that range. So I think he's splitting up his range there on the turn, and he's going to end up having a lot more draws and things like that in his turn check back range. You know, some of which will be diamonds, and some of which will be, you know, Jack, Queen, 10, stuff like that. So, which may or may not have diamonds. Although that one, when you have the combo draw, is probably just going to go ahead and barrel. So I think, I think given that, it's a close spot, but I think one where we should call. Yeah, I would have liked to see a call there. Tough spot, though. Here we 3-bet and get cold 4-bet with our perfect jack-high double suited rundown. Obviously just call and then flop nada, gonna fold. And table 3, we call a raise blind versus blind. 3-betting is certainly fine. Flop and turn go check check, which like sometimes I'll bet the flop with that hand, but on the turn when we pick up actual showdown value with a 10, I don't think we need to be betting anymore. And yeah, just gonna fold when the river trips up the 9s. Looks like I was considering 3-betting with the aces, but elected to just flat. Not a great board. Flop checks around. Now I want to be betting. I think I have the best hand pretty much always. And I want to bet for value and protection. And hopefully take it down there on the flop, on the turn, which we do. Check our option with double suited. Great double suited hand. I think it's fine. Gonna at least peel here. Yeah, I don't think raising is that great of an idea on table 2. Like, we just have too much equity, I think, to start bluffing with this. Yeah, really standard call again on the turn. On the river, I don't think we're good ever, basically. Like, very, very rarely are we good. And yeah, I think betting here with a jack, trying to rep 10 jack here, yeah, by sizing for full pot, is a pretty good option. So, yeah, I wouldn't expect him to fold 6-10, but I think something like 6-8 is going to be put in a really, really tough spot. Like, yeah, we're going to have a ton of 10 jack here, so obviously good call by him. I think folding that hand, given the board and how wide our ranges are, he makes a good call here. Table 2, open on the button, standard, and c-bet the flop. You could check this one back with a double gutter. Really sucks if you get check raised. So, yeah, checking back is fine. And follow up on the turn when we improve pretty significantly. And on the river, we just go ahead and check back. And looks like he had a set. Is that right? That is right. Three bet out of the small blind with our double pair. Try and get this one heads up. And we flop middle set on, very high stack to pot ratio still on a board where the nuts are changing on a great majority of cards. So starting out here, planning to check call. He checks back. And yeah, now I think we need to size pretty big, given how many draws are out there. And given, I think check raising is a good option, but not when we're this deep. And by deep, I mean the stack to pot ratio, not just the stack sizes. We've shrunk the stack to pot pretty significantly by 3-betting, but it's still too high. Like, if we try to check raise the turn, first of all, we give him a great chance to realize his equity for free. We're probably not checking twice and just folding with our 3-bet range here in this spot. So I think he's checking pretty often. And, if he does bet and we check raise, we can check raise about half our stack, something like that. And then be kind of stuck on all rivers with pretty poor visibility. So I think betting is the better option in that spot. on the turn. Obviously, really bad river. We check, and I think he just checks it back, and we win. Some playable hands on all the tables right now. I think I'd like to just flatten the small blind on table 3. Looks like I fold. I think that's a bit too tight. Flop checks around on table 2. Gonna go ahead and bet my turn trips. Don't think check raising is... I mean, I guess it's okay, but I think betting is just better. Four-way flop on table 1 with, not really much to bluff with. Just go ahead and fold. We're going to go ahead and wrap up the footage right there. I hope you guys enjoyed this 4-part video series on Zoom. You saw me probably make some good plays, probably some not so good plays. And yeah, you should have some good stuff to think about, hopefully, and implement into your game. If you guys have any questions or comments, let me know in that section below on the page here. And if you want to get any more kind of PLO advice, commentary, videos, stuff like that, that I don't release anywhere else, you can check out my site, PLOmastery.com. Talk to you guys later.